When it comes to comic books, the big two companies that spring to mind are DC Comics and Marvel Comics. Both have been around for decades, telling us stories of costumed crime fighters and cosmic beings. Considering how long the two have been in competition, it's no surprise that over the years, each company has borrowed from the other pretty liberally. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today we will be taking a look at the top 10 DC knockoffs of Marvel characters. Let's dive in. Number 10, Guardian and Captain America. Jim Harper was a rookie cop on the Metropolis police force. He was put on duty in a rough area, and not a day would go by where the civilians in the area wouldn't pelt him with rotten food. One day he was ambushed by hoodlums, and I guess something just broke in his brain. He went to a costume store, bought a costume, and became a vigilante in addition to being a cop. What makes him similar to Captain America is his trademark shield, which he uses to defend himself and attack his enemies. Other than that, he's not really that similar to Captain America, other than the fact that both characters were created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, but I figured it was worth mentioning and putting at the bottom of the list. Number 9, Atomic Skull and Ghost Rider. There have been a couple Atomic Skulls over the years in DC Comics, but the one we're going to talk about today is the Joseph Martin version, who first appeared in 1991 and gives off massive Ghost Rider vibes. Sure, they have very different origins, with Atomic Skull being a supervillain who was the victim of an accident at Star Labs which gave him his look as well as energy projection abilities, and Ghost Rider is a motorcycle stunt driver who is possessed by a demon and uses his hellfire powers to punish evildoers. But the look is too similar to ignore. The flaming skull look is so quintessentially Ghost Rider that seeing it on anyone else feels a bit copycat. As if that wasn't bad enough, in other appearances the Atomic Skull even wears a leather motorcycle jacket, making the two almost indistinguishable, even if it is only on a visual level. Number 8, Black Racer and the Silver Surfer. Jack Kirby is responsible for the creation of so many comic characters, one of which is the Silver Surfer. He was an alien named Norrin Radd, whose planet was about to be eaten by Galactus. He managed to convince Galactus to spare his planet if he would become the Herald of Galactus. He was granted cosmic powers and became the Silver Surfer, who traveled the galaxy looking for planets that his master could eat while riding around on his surfboard. A creation that Kirby created a few years later for DC Comics bears a few similarities. Vietnam vet Willie Walker was paralyzed in combat and was contacted by the Source, who is an aspect of the Presence, one of the energies that apparently created the universe in DC Comics. The Source made Willie the physical manifestation of Death, the Black Racer, who flies around on a pair of cosmically charged skis collecting souls. Number 7, Red Hood and the Winter Soldier. Considering how much crap people give Batman for bringing a child along while he fights crime, people tend to forget that Captain America literally made a child fight in World War II as his sidekick. After Captain America was unfrozen from the ice in Avengers number 4, we learned that his sidekick had perished in the war after being blown up on a mission, and that Cap was now alone. This was maintained for over 40 years until the Out of Time arc in 2005, when Captain America had to go up against a highly trained assassin who seemed to know everything about his past, the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier of course turned out to be Bucky, who had survived the explosion and was brainwashed into becoming a deadly assassin. It was a mind-blowing arc for fans of the classic Cap stories and had long-lasting effects on the continuity, with Bucky eventually becoming a hero again and having his story adapted for the MCU. A few months later, Batman went through a similar ordeal. His second Robin, Jason Todd, had died in an explosion set by the Joker in the 80s and was considered one of the few permanent comic book deaths along with Uncle Ben. Although the idea of a villainous Jason was teased in 2003 in the Hush story, this turned out to be an elaborate ruse by Clayface, although this was later retconned so that Jason's real resurrection would feel more set up. In the Under the Red Hood arc, Batman had to go up against a highly trained and murderous vigilante who seemed to know everything about his past, the Red Hood. Red Hood of course turned out to be Jason, who had been brought back to life when Superboy Prime punched reality so hard that it broke. It was a mind-blowing arc for fans of the second Robin and had long-lasting effects on the continuity, with Jason eventually becoming a hero again and having his story adapted for the beloved animated film. These happened so close to each other that it's hard to say if this is a true knockoff, but either way, Marvel beat DC to the punch by a couple of months. Number Number 6. Bumble Bee and the Wasp. First appearing all the way back in Tales to Astonish number 44 in 1963, Janet Van Dyne is the partner of Ant-Man, who was exposed to his Pym particles, which caused her biology to be altered so that she could shrink. She also has synthetic wings that allow her to fly. She used these tools and abilities to become one of the founding Avengers. She is very similar to the DC hero Bumble Bee, who debuted years later in 1976 Teen Titans number 45. Bumble Bee was a scientist who was dating one of the Titans, Harold, and developed her persona so she could stage an attack on the team that her boyfriend could defuse, making him look good in front of the team. When the Titans eventually discovered the truth, they were so impressed with her abilities that she was offered a spot on the team. Like the Wasp, her supersuit allows her to fly and also allows her to shrink in size. However, the shrinking has led to her developing a heart condition, which she manages with medication created by Dr. Niles Calder. She is a consistent member of both the Teen Titans and Doom Patrol, but hasn't had the mainstream popularity of the Marvel character who inspired her. Number 5. Aquaman and Namor the Submariner. Namor the Submariner is another character who appeared in a comic published by Timely Comics, the company that would eventually become Marvel, in a comic called Motion Picture Funnies Weekly. He is the son of a normal human and Atlantean royalty, making him the heir to the Atlantean throne. He is amphibious, being able to survive on both land and water, and has super strength and speed, being able to swim at speeds up to 345 miles per hour. He is also able to use telepathy to communicate with and control marine life. A few years later, in 1956's Adventure Comics number 229, we were introduced to Arthur Curry, also known as Aquaman. His father was a regular human and his mother was a member of Atlantean royalty named Atlanta, making him the heir to the throne of Atlantis. Like Namor, he is amphibious and has super strength and durability, as well as his most well-known ability, the ability to telepathically communicate with and control marine life. Unlike Namor, he doesn't have little ankle wings that allow him to fly around. Aquaman is more well known by the general public due to years of appearing in cartoons where he was a less than dignified hero, often coming across as extremely silly. But when making fun of Aquaman, it's important to remember that Namor was stupid first. Number 4. Red Tool and Deadpool. Marvel's Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, was infamously based off of DC's Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. Both are master assassins who used a combination of guns and swords to destroy their enemies. Over the years, Deadpool developed into a much more distinct character, getting a snarky personality that earned him the nickname the Merc with the Mouth. Deadpool has become one of the most popular Marvel characters, receiving his own books, movies, and video games, while Deathstroke has remained comparatively obscure to mainstream audiences. So, considering that Deadpool was clearly inspired by a DC character, it's only fair that DC would then rip them off. Wayne Wilkins, aka Red Tool, is a vigilante who is romantically obsessed with Harley Quinn. He has a bit of a power tool theme, with saw blades, hammers, and a power drill being some of his go-to weapons, but between the name, his general look, and crazy personality, Red Tool and Deadpool are clearly linked. Number 3. Commander Steel and Captain America. Captain America first appeared in late 1940 in his own series published by Timely Comics, which, as I said before, would eventually evolve into Marvel. His origin has remained relatively intact across his representation in various media in the years since. Steve Rogers was a weakling who was unfit for active duty in World War II, so he volunteered for a radical experiment that gave him super strength among other powers. He became the Star-Spangled Man and fought in the war as Captain America, one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time. Somewhat less iconic is one of the DC characters he inspired, Commander Steel. First appearing in early 1978, Henry Haywood was not unfit for duty and was an enlisted soldier in the Second World War, but he was injured in a sabotage attack. He underwent an experiment that implanted mechanized steel devices into his body, granting him super strength. He started wearing a red, white, and blue Americana-themed outfit and began fighting in the Second World War. It's a pretty egregious imitation, but it's hard to be too upset about this act of copying because honestly, aside from lists like this talking about copycat characters, when does anyone ever bring up Commander Steel? Number 2. Red Lion and Black Panther. Black Panther made his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four, number 52. He's really T'Challa, the ruler of the African nation of Wakanda, who uses his vibranium panther suit to defend his people and the entire world. He is a massively popular character, but he has inspired a few other characters, such as the Red Lion. Red Lion is really Matthew Bland, a ruthless dictator who has appointed himself president for life of the African nation of Berudunia, and dresses up in a red outfit that makes him look like his animal of choice. He is obviously inspired by Black Panther, but like an evil version of him. He He's the Homelander to Black Panther's Superman, but beyond that, there's not much to the character. Number 1. Swamp Thing and Man-Thing. So, in 1971, Marvel introduced Man-Thing. He was a scientist named Ted Sallis trying to create his own version of the super soldier serum before being attacked by criminals who wanted to steal his work. To keep the formula secret, Ted injected himself with the serum before getting in a car accident that caused his car to crash into a magic swamp. The serum and the magic caused him to transform into a big green swamp monster who can control plant life. While one of Man-Thing's creators was working on the project for Marvel, his roommate, an artist working for DC, was creating a different character named Swamp Thing who made his first appearance 1 month later. Like Man-Thing, Swamp Thing was a scientist named Alec Holland who was working on a secret formula before getting attacked by criminals who wanted to steal it for themselves. He was doused in the formula and ended up in the nearby swamp, which absorbed his consciousness and turned him into a giant green swamp monster who can control plant life. The characters are so similar that Marvel originally planned to sue DC, but decided not to as it would set precedent, and they were worried that they would get sued by the creators of The Heap, the original comic book swamp monster who first appeared in 1942. Any other DC characters that feel a little too similar to the ones in the Marvel universe? Any other characters you want to see highlighted in a future list? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.